Hey everyone, welcome to Ink Scribes, the comics podcast where we discuss the art and craft of comics. I'm Colin Singh, an aspiring comics artist and lifelong student of the art, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Eric Zawadzki and Taylor Stauft.
I'm Eric Zawadzki. I've been working in comics professionally for around 7 years, but that was primarily working freelance. This year, I'm launching a creator-owned comic that I've been working on for the past year or so. It's going to be published by Image Comics and called Assorted Crisis Events. It's actually been getting a lot of buzz, and I'm super excited for it to come out in March. It's written by Dennis Camp, and yeah, it's like the best thing I've ever done. In fact, a part of the genesis of this show is that I've been sort of diligently studying comics art just to prepare for ACE, for Assorted Crisis Events. So I figured, why not put that study material on YouTube and hang out with my friends.
Hell yeah. And I'm Taylor Stauft. I have a comic from Fire and Blood, and a Jason Zhang adventure coming in May. We'll hear more about it as that approaches, though.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah. Today we have a very special episode. We'll be looking at the short stories produced by comics master John Paul Leon in the later half of his career.
So yeah, for me personally, the aspect of his work that I'm trying to adapt into my own is what I see as his perfect mix of simplicity and complexity.
Yeah.
He's very economical with his lines, but he also fills the page with information. His settings are very lived in and alive. He fills every room with props and just evidence of people having been there, having worked there or lived there. Yeah, I mean, what do you guys think of his work?
So I don't have a lot of experience with JPL, although I do love what I have seen. And despite not knowing much about him, I did buy. I'm not going to dig it out, but I did buy the that I got that as well. The Wintermen Artist Edition. Just seeing like all the breakdowns and the preview art, I was like, I have to have this. He is the kind of artist that I wouldn't draw like him, but goddamn, do I respect and love the stuff that he turns out. He is just like, he doesn't give a fuck. It's just like chunky lines everywhere. And yet he makes it work so well.
Yeah. Yeah. He just breaks the information down to like 4 or 5 lines. I got into John Paul Leon from Earth X back in high school. At the time, I was going through this phase where I was going through a Japanese phase, you could say. Like, I was really into Joe Madureira. I was into, a lot of the Top Cow books. I was anything colored by Liquid. I was really into like the poppy style. But in his case, he's very realistic, and I had to actually mature and grow into that. But the first series of Earth X, yeah, I did like it. I did like his art, but he wasn't my guy. He didn't become my guy per se until, I don't know, probably my 30s, when I started looking at some of the stuff he was doing with Wildstorm at DC, specifically the Midnighter issue that he did, which we did do an episode on that before, I believe. He's definitely a master. I was really sad to hear that when he had passed. But the testimonies by all his fellow professionals, and the memorial ads that he got in DC and Marvel Comics, I believe, shows his impact on the industry with a very small body of work, I would say. He's not one of those guys who's done hundreds of issue runs on like any big 2 book. This is a guy who's very selective with what he does, or what he did, and he's very selective of who he worked with. So, yeah, I'm really excited for this episode.
Yeah, I guess he doesn't have a huge run, right? It's just kind of, he drops in here and there. I think the longest thing I've ever read from him was Batman Creature of the Night.
Well, Winterman was technically longer. That was like four issues, but
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he was just a very meticulous.
Yeah, I would also say that I think Earth X was, till this day, his biggest book. I mean, it was a Marvel event book, so it's probably sold the most of anything else he ever did since then. But he's obviously continuously produced better work since then. It's just that that's probably what he's most well known for, even till this day.
You know what,
It's
Colin? I
incredible.
think I'm right there with you in the like, boy, I need to grow as a man before like understanding what was great about
Exactly
JPL,
that.
you know?
Yeah.
Like as a boy,
Yeah.
as
What
a
is
young man,
chiaroscuro?
yeah. I was like, I don't know.
What's
This is kind of stark, isn't it? It's like, yes, that is the point I see
yeah,
now. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he's
yeah,
like a
yeah,
just one of the best draftsmen that's ever worked in comics. And like, yeah, when
100%.
you're younger, maybe you don't have a full appreciation of draftsmanship. But he was a very meticulous artist, and he couldn't take on extended gigs, so he would only take on like 2 issue gigs or short stories. And he did a lot of cover work, a lot of amazing covers. Like here's an example of a DMZ cover. John Pauleon's like one of my favorite artists, so in the future I'm gonna do a whole bunch more episodes. I'm gonna probably do an episode on his covers, and also, his 2 issue and 1 issue works from the 2010s. But this episode is primarily like the last 10 short stories he did in his career, which are pretty much, they're all DC except one. But yeah, let's just dive right in. So the cover date of April 2010 was DMZ number 50. And that had a whole bunch of artists, which you can see here. And he did 4 pages for the character Wilson for Wilson's Kitchen.
Man, I loved this series. This slapped so hard.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the Vertigo stuff in the 2010s. I read
Yeah.
so much of it.
I
So
was
yeah, I was a big fan of DMZ.
I was a real fan of Brian Wood's output in general around that time. He was doing demo and books like that for Vertigo and yeah, even when he got picked up for Conan, when he got his Conan run was quite good as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, so he only did 4 pages for this. I believe it's colored by Jeremy Cox because that's the only colorist credited in this entire book. But yeah, I'll say like the first half of these short stories are colored by somebody else, and then John Pauleon starts coloring his own stuff in the last half. Okay, so this right off the bat sort of highlights something he's very good at, which is drawing cities. And so
Yeah.
with here, he's tasked with drawing Chinatown, or the Chinatown of DMZ, the titular DMZ.
Yeah. Which is just like a busted version of the real world one in New York, right? That's
Yeah,
the yeah.
yeah, it's sort of like I guess New York has been turned into a demilitarized zone, and it's a new society has been created as it's like
Yeah, they have to
trapped in
retrofit.
between a war.
Yeah. Yeah, they got to retrofit everything. It's great.
It's always fun seeing like somebody draw Chinatown, who like someone who English is their primary language, because I always wonder like how accurate is this. I about like 7 years ago I drew a comic where I had to draw some scenes in Chinatown, and I just copied letter for letter what I saw on my reference. I didn't have anybody to consult to say is this accurate, but I did see someone on Twitter confirm to me, yeah, no, that's all accurate. But
It's like a
yeah, he
giant
makes
restaurant sign that says "You love Chinese food."
To your point about economical, I guess, or like putting a lot of information in despite his like thick lines, like that's a great crowd shot. And it's not a bunch of people. When you zoom in, you see it's a lot of just kind of the hint and shape of stuff and just kind of, but it's layered so well. It's the
yeah,
sort of thing that like I always get lost in crowd scenes of like, well, how much information do I have to put in? This much? No, it's still too much. God.
yeah, that always is a struggle that every artist has to go through, which is when you're drawing crowd shots, just like how much information to put in there. But like
Yeah.
this panel actually highlights very specifically what I was saying earlier, which is that melding of complexity and simplicity, because the
Yeah.
characters here, the figures are all very simple. There's not a lot of detail on them, and there's just like splashes of spot blacks, but the setting just has so much going on and so much
Mm,
layers of information. And that's another thing. It's like he enters this building, and there is evidence that there are workers there, and that people have been there. There's a mop bucket, and there's things thrown all around. There's a seat there for a guard, and he just puts
Oh
so much
yeah.
thought into the settings, and yeah, you can tell that people have been there.
Yeah, there's huge amounts of information he's relaying, but it's very stripped down to just the bare bones. And I noticed that he does that more. I want to say he does that more for like the independent stuff, or at least the earlier stuff. But when he starts to move into like Batman and bigger books like that, he does add a little bit more, But in this case, I think I prefer it this way, much like just the outline of a broomstick, or the staircase. If you go back a page, so that staircase there at the bottom panel, unmistakably, it's a staircase with like nothing to show really. There's one, two, three, four, five white boxes and just black, right?
It's like he doesn't do a lot of rendering. Like he's not doing little ticks and stuff to fill the volume of stuff. So he's just kind of letting like
Well,
spaces sit. Yeah.
by limiting himself to like no cross hatching,
Yeah.
no gradation really. Like if you take the back of the guy's hood in panel what 3 there, it's all just black. It's just blotted blacks, right? There's no definition to the actual hood itself, or even the fur. It's just spotted blacks where like the light would hit in such a way that there would be a specific shadow underneath that tuft of fur. He's not actually defining the fur
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. He's very comfortable with letting the artifacts of his medium be enough detail. Like, what happens when you just lay this brush down? We'll see. It's good enough. That's
Well,
all you need.
I would say it's masterfully stripped down.
Yeah.
It's stripped down to bare bones, but he knows exactly what you need.
Yeah, I mean, he knows how much detail to put in, and how much to leave out, for your eyes to move across the page.
I do have to ask you though, how do you feel about the blank space next to the final panel on the left side?
Uh, in his Batman Catwoman special, the last thing he did in his career, they published his layouts in the back, and I noticed that he had a very deliberate idea on how it would be lettered.
Mm-hmm.
And when you actually read the comic, it was not lettered how
Oh,
how he how he intended, because you can see in those layouts there was sort of white gutter space that was supposed to be saved for text, but the letterer just put like a caption box in the middle of the panel, or hovering over 2 panels instead of in that negative space that he wanted. So I can't help but think of that when I look at this.
okay.
I don't know what his intention was. It's hard to speculate. There is a potential
Well,
that he wanted the
I'm,
caption boxes to be there, but I don't know.
Yeah. I just remember my first published book, Uncaged, 10th anniversary coming out. Yeah, Uncaged, available on Comixology. I pulled this sort of thing as like well, I don't know what to do. And I remember a professional artist, after it was all set, just like ripped into me for it. I was just like, what the hell is this? This is
Yeah.
atrocious. Why didn't you just extend it all the way over and fill up the space? This is nothing.
yeah, yeah.
But that's the difference between JPL and myself, I guess.
Okay, so what else we got here? One more page, and yeah, it's basically just a look inside this kitchen for the character Wilson.
I do like the 3 panels there of the tofu getting cut. I like stuff like
It's
that. I
very
like seeing
satisfying. Yeah.
someone. I like seeing a character being meticulous in performing some kind of act like that, and it shows step by step what they're doing.
I love that all the cooks leave the kitchen. It. I remember Wilson being like somewhere between gangster and uh, local warlord and mayor of the DMZ, and
Mm.
all of them leaving, especially with like them coming towards you and Maddie and Wilson in the background. It felt very like Goodfellas-y.
Yeah, yeah, because yeah,
Yeah.
he had the full on gangster vibe going on. Here we have a
Yeah,
nice Eduardo Riso piece. But yeah, I just want to also comment that like John Paul Leon was doing covers for DMZ around this time, and those covers are just stunning.
they're
Every one of
fantastic.
them.
Yeah, just this alone, it's so
Mhm.
good.
But moving on to the second one, we've got September 2010. He worked on a backup story for Human Target number 6. I believe this series specifically came out because there was a network TV show for Human
There sure
Target.
was. Fox.
Yeah, there was. Yeah.
Did you guys watch that show?
No.
No, I didn't.
This first page is credited to John Paul Leon. This whole of this what like 6-page story, but it clearly is not. So there's some sort of thing that happened. I mean, it honestly looks like the art from the beginning of the book, which I believe is Bruno Redondo. Very strange.
Oh,
It
wow.
and it is like it is mimicking John Paul Leon's designs for the panels with these circles in between that we see later on in the short. But yeah, it's even colored differently. It's got more of an
Yeah.
airbrushy type coloring. If you look
Yeah.
at if you look at the arm here, whereas his stuff is colored as
Yeah, it's a sudden
It's very
shift
flat.
to.
is like a cell shaded type effect. So I don't know what
Yeah.
happened there.
This actually reminds me of. It's a bit of a reach, but it reminds me of Chris Ware and his
Really?
work on like Jimmy Corrigan and Acme Novelty. Just overall, just in terms of the A to B, and the continuous. I don't know, the grid and how one thing leads to another, and it's very easy to read and it's very directed. Yeah.
Now I have to say this does not work as a double page spread because it's not
No,
intended to be a double page spread, but it when you put them side by side, it looks sort of like it should be. So
it does. Yeah, but
yeah,
and at the same time breaking its own pattern too.
yeah.
It's weird. This is just making me realize. I wish John Paul Leon had like a like a James Bond book to do before he
Oh yeah.
passed too early. Like that would have been just
I mean, this
wow.
sells
What
that
a
completely. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, this could not have been easy to draw. This was an incredibly difficult short for him, I'd imagine, because every other panel has to establish a new setting and a new antagonist. Um,
Yeah.
so I should say the structure of it is like 9 panel grids, and I guess there's 5 different stories going on, and like each panel 1 of each page is a continuation of the previous panel 1, and then each panel 3 is a continuation of the previous panel 3. So the
Wait, really? Holy shit. Okay.
oh no, you didn't get that because like
I
well
no, I just read it as like intercutting to the background of what brought him to the colored portions.
so right here you see the middle panel. He's diving into the water, and then in the middle panel on the next page, it's him interacting with somebody underwater. In fact, I guess being stabbed by that person, and then as it continues, he's still underwater in this middle panel, and I guess
Oh,
he
well,
Yeah.
recognizes. So by the third page, he recognizes that the antagonist has this tattoo. I didn't read the Human Target series, so I don't know what any of this is supposed to mean. But what it comes down to is he's had all these fights and he's had all these injuries from these fights. And
Yeah.
I, I what exactly is this trying to say? I guess this is just another fight for him.
I think it's like this is how far he's willing to go. Because the point of Human Target is he's a bodyguard that goes above and beyond. He either becomes you or like takes on your likeness in order to draw attention away, or becomes a figure in your life that whoever's targeting you can't help but hit him, depending on the situation. So I think it's supposed to be like this is how far he's willing to go for his clients.
The other thing is the like this gang or whoever it is that he's up against. If you go like to the last page, one of the last things he says is, he's talking about because the fight with the woman is current, and all the pencil panels are flashbacks. So he says that. how'd your date go? Like his handler is saying, how did your date go? And he says, well, I've had better, right? So essentially, he's been through the ringer, and this fight was not as hard as previous fights. Like, and that's also why they point out his injuries. And again, it goes back to it's a bit of a reach, but this kind of reminds me of Chris Ware with the word balloons pointing to things inside the image and like blowing them up, and like so you can see what he's looking at, and it's also pointing out his injuries by like kind of isolating them in their own panels and things like that. Chris Ware did stuff like that all the time.
Oh
right?
yeah. Actually, this page right here, it almost could be like a fine art piece. Yeah, it's just so well done, and with the owl in the middle. What I do like about this is that oftentimes an artist will rely on the colorist to denote a flashback, just like the note is just color it differently so it's clear it's a flashback. But with John Paulion stuff, everything is in the inks. All of his comics can be read in black and white, and you'll perfectly understand. And so he made the choice to draw the flashbacks in a different way, basically not inking them, because basically it's pencil work, right, guys?
Sure looks like it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And oftentimes with action scenes, he tries to like pull the backgrounds back so that you're mostly focused on the action. But again, like this is incredibly difficult to do because each panel is isolated in its own story, and he has to make clear that there is a distinction between like this is the same setting as the previous panel threes. So yeah, not an easy short story to do.
Yeah,
I will say again. Also, he picks the right moment to draw for that panel. Like in terms of like an action or a moment in time, he picks the exact perfect shot to draw. When she's winding up for a punch, or if he's tackling her, he's jumping off the boat to dive into the water.
I love that boat.
The way his legs, that kick to her stomach on the side there, like that's perfectly done.
I love the one with her getting him with like the hand strike up at the top,
the palm of her hand. Yeah.
Like great stuff.
Great stuff. That, you know exactly what's happening.
I like that she loses her shoe right here as she's being tackled. Basically, she was standing where the shoe was, and the shoe stays stationary as she moves. So it's a great little addition to movement. Something that I'll talk about a little later is that if you want to show movement, if you can add extra things in there, extra props to help show that, it always makes it a lot better.
I can't remember. I just recently learned this, but apparently that is a real thing that happens too. That like if you get suddenly shoved back, it is possible for your shoes to stay where they are and for you to leave them. Because he does not gritty, but grounded and representative stuff so well. Like this is a fight that could happen, right? It's not Superman fighting the Martian Manhunter or something midair. It's like these are two seasoned fighters just going at it.
So do you guys think that the circles are like playing with the iconography of Human Target?
That's what I was thinking.
Yes, absolutely.
Because like what else could it be, right?
Yeah. But okay, so moving on. Next up, cover date April 2012. He did. I guess there was IDW did a series of Rocketeer short stories, and like this was the second series. And yeah, he just did issue 2.
I did buy these Rocketeer Adventures 1 and 2. I think they were each 4-issue miniseries with like 3 or 4 short stories per issue. And, some by Dave Stevens, but artists like Chris Samney, writers like Mark Waid would do, 8 or 9, 10-page stories for this. And they were all very, very well done. I have this whole series, and it's great.
I do want to give a shout out to the departed Dave Stevens for making a character in Cliff Secord that is Cliff's face, regardless of the high detail of Stevens or JPL. Like that's true. That's that man's face.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
that middle panel in
Yeah,
Leon's story, page 1, that's Cliff Secord,
yeah.
100%. Yeah, I did a Rocketeer deep dive when I really got into Dave Stevens, a few years back. So I had to buy like all the Rocketeer books.
Of
They were
course, yeah.
also IDW was, I think it was IDW that was printing these hardcover editions of the Dave Stevens stuff, and yeah, I just ate it up. It was so good. It was so good. But every artist that has depicted him in their own stuff, either for a cover or a short story, it's true. It's unmistakably that's Cliff Secord. I mean, if you guys
Yeah.
haven't read Rocketeer, you'll understand. Like when
Yeah, I
you read
haven't.
a couple
I
of his
haven't read
stories, it'll
Rocketeer.
grow on you.
Oh,
Yeah,
you should track it down. It's super fun. Like it is just all the way.
yeah, it's pretty
It's
good.
everything great about pulp stories.
Yeah,
Like it is
it's a
just
grease it's yeah, it's a grease monkey with a jetpack, and you don't think that would be a very versatile character, but he gets
yeah.
into so many different situations where you're like, whoa, that worked out. I wouldn't think
Yeah,
that a guy
every
who just
time
gets
it's
his ass kicked every time and
Yeah.
he
flies,
has no
he
idea how to
manages to
fight.
use, yeah, exactly.
So
He's
what do
just
you guys think of this short story specifically?
super fun, and
It was good. Yeah,
it's the kind of it's got the same feel as the OG Rocketeer stuff. It's the 30s. It's Hollywood. It's
something that bothers me though
adventure.
on this first page, something bothers me is that screeching sound effect on the last panel.
Yeah, it
Because
definitely
I think
sticks
it
out
kind
like a
of
sore thumb.
it clashes with like the dog barking. That fits,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
actually, that is
the
perfect.
cars,
In fact, it was so
yeah.
perfect that I was wondering if it was done by John Paul Leon. But on his website, he has original art, and you can see that that barking sound effect is not on the original art. So
Huh.
Hmm.
yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe he added it digitally afterwards, or maybe it was done by the letterer. And the letterer is Chris Mowry, I believe. Uh,
I don't,
John
I don't
Paul
know.
Leon is well known for working with John Workman. John Workman, most famous for working with Walt Simonson.
Mm-hmm.
Very well
Hmm.
known for adding that doom sound effect for in those Thor comics.
Oh,
Brackadoon. Yeah.
The best John Paul Leon stuff, in my mind, is colored by John Paul Leon and lettered by John Workman. But interestingly enough, this short story was written by Walt Simonson, who was John Paul Leon's mentor.
oh,
And
hell yeah.
yeah, so something I like about this is that you see a good bit of acting here with the first 4 panels.
Mm,
In the first panel, he's sort of seen as waiting. In the second panel, he looks frustrated. And then in the third panel, he's thinking about the love of his life. And then he sort of stands up and notices something. And yeah, the first 3 panels are just him sitting there, but he goes through these 3 sort of emotions. And yeah,
now
it's
that
just a
you
brilliant bit of acting.
now that you bring that up, it's you're right. There's great acting with the two women up front in panel one and then two. Like that's the same woman, and she is like I don't know. She's so
Being
excited.
pulled by the
She's
arm.
just yeah, she's
Yeah.
Yeah.
excited, but doesn't really want to go into the crowd, and it's yeah. This is the
In
sort of
fact, the
thing that
hand,
yeah.
in panel 1, the hand, the one girl has her hand on the other's elbow and she's pulling her. Like that's such a
Mm,
genuine shot. Like I said, he picks the exact perfect moment to depict in his art
yeah.
every time. And there's a great passage of time when she's being dragged. You see her arm is coming off in panel 2. Her arm is kind of being pulled off panel. She's
Yeah.
still being pulled by that other girl, right? Yeah, it's just it's perfect.
So something interesting here that I noticed. This is these gunshot effects going by that was not in the original art that you can see. So it's like this yellow sort of effect going by.
Huh.
So I think
Mm.
he might have done some things digitally, but I'm not sure. Um, this is colored by Dave Stewart, who is pretty much universally seen as like the best colorist in the entire industry.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think his coloring is closest to when John Paul Leon is coloring himself, specifically with the flat colors and how he colors buildings. and also how he effectively uses the white of the page, which we'll see when we look at the shorts that John Paulion colored himself.
Okay. Yeah, I'm wondering what that means. Also, that Rocketeer figure. Am I wrong in thinking John Paulion rarely breaks panels, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess he doesn't break panels.
This is a great example of like keeping everything like, no, I'm going to keep it all inside the panels so that when he does it, it hits,
It
right?
feels special when he does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's only the figure that's breaking the panel. The
Yeah.
exhaust from his jetpack is still within panel. It's really well done. He figured it out pretty well there. And
Yeah.
another thing I want to say actually about Dave Stewart. So flat colors are probably my favorite type of comics coloring. I think that's probably my most preferred of any other type. I know that I do like liquid type colors. I like colors that are really saturated. But when it comes to just flat, when you can strip it down to just flat colors, I think that works the best in this art form.
I think it
I
depends
think
on
if you
the
can,
art specifically. Like if there are a lot of spot blacks, and as I said, like John Paulion, like his work is so good that it can exist on its own. So if the artist is doing all that work, then flat colors is very effective. But there's a lot of art out there which I would not recommend flat colors for.
It also goes to the feel of the book as
like what?
well. Like this is perfect for the Rocketeer. It feels like a
Like a
serial.
retro comic, yeah.
Yeah, like an old comic
Mm.
or an adventure serial before a movie or that sort of, it's not high def because the time could not capture high def.
And something I want to comment on this big panel as well that we were talking about is like, look at how, shoot, let's go back. Look at how he always draws buildings. There's always lighting on the buildings. There's always sort of
That's what it is.
there's always darkness on one side of the building just to give that three dimensionality. Even even on this, like, these panels here, but like for this panel, the only spot blacks are on the foreground figure, and there's no spot blacks on the
Mm,
buildings, and
Yeah,
that's
nice
to
catch.
create the different
yes,
planes. And this is what I'm
that's.
talking about, where
I'm gonna
you
take
don't
that.
yeah, you don't need the colors to differentiate between foreground and background. He's not
Yeah.
relying on the colors. He knows that like all the focus should be on where the spot blacks are, and um, there should be less focus on the background elements. And yeah, this is just like this is comics 101. This is important stuff for any artist to learn. Now, another great thing is when he's drawing a vehicle, he gets those tires off the ground during action scenes,
Hell yeah.
and
Oh
it's
yeah, he does, doesn't he? And
very
it's
dynamic.
yeah, and then you get to see the right. Because I remember from one of the things that I've carried with me from art school is when something is like making full contact with the ground, it is, and this isn't going to be like groundbreaking or anything, but it is feeling like there's no movement here, even if it's in a moving pose or something like that. When it's making solid contact,
It's really
it may as
planting
well
them,
just
right?
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So,
Like that car with the lamppost in page 2 there.
oh yeah, it's just a fantastic shot right there with all the
Yeah,
figures
Yeah.
flying out.
great.
So this effect where his I guess the fumes or the blast is like integrating with the panel gutters. That's a
That's
recurring
tricky.
trope that we're going to see in a lot of these short stories. Is there's he takes a lot of background elements, or a lot of parts of the panel that sort of get integrated with the gutter space, and this is how he colors it himself when he's coloring it. It just goes pure white, but some of the other colorists have a different approach, I believe.
It's also a great use of that technique to tell you something about the Rocketeer. The Rocketeer is not particularly good with a rocket pack. He's just the only guy with a rocket
Yeah.
pack.
Exactly. Yes.
So,
He's a
so
great
part of it
character.
is he's always kind of a screw up, or
Yeah, he's not
It's not
particularly
so
good at
much a
fighting. Yeah,
yeah, he's not that he's so much of a screw up. It's more just he's getting his butt kicked. He always does the right thing. He's like Peter Parker in that sense, but he's just not great at it. And
he's
he
just
ends up
he's
fighting
a
like these
regular
guys that are
guy.
like 7 feet tall. He ends up fighting these criminal masterminds who are way smarter than him, right? And they're already 2 steps ahead of him, and he's actually literally running to catch up to But he
I
ends up
actually
saving the day at the end, for one
I
reason or
really
another.
like that in stories where you have the hero just get their ass kicked. Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
it really shows. I don't know, just perseverance over the
It
odds.
is why, to this day, and even in his own movies, Tom Cruise will still get his ass kicked in Mission Impossible movies. He
Oh
has
yeah,
the clout to win every fight, but if you watch those movies, he does not. He
whereas
gets it.
No, he gets put through the
whereas you
Yeah,
ringer in
you
some of
get
them.
a lot of Fast and the Furious movie stars who demand they
exactly.
never get their ass kicked, and it's
Yeah.
Yeah,
not
Yeah.
as fun.
Or at the very least, it's a
yeah.
draw, right?
We hurt each other the same amount,
Yeah.
Something I like here is the height difference between, I guess, this love interest and the
which
Rocketeer.
makes sense when you find out who it
Yeah,
is.
that's Jenny.
No,
Yeah,
that's not her.
yeah. Well,
Oh, sorry. No, his love interest is Jenny,
yeah. There's a
his
twist at the end
girlfriend.
of the story, which I mean, I at this point I've only read a couple of Rocketeer stories now. Last year we looked at an Adam Hughes story, and there was a real life figure put into that story, and now there's a real life figure put into this story. Is this a recurring trope in?
So Betty, his girlfriend, is just incredibly
Right,
based
Betty, excuse me, not
on
Jenny.
the real Betty Page, the
Betty
real
Page.
Betty Page, because Dave Stevens was a fan of her like modeling work, and in her later life, he assisted her in getting a lot of the rights to her images back.
Yeah, she was living
Uh,
with him, right?
I don't know if they were living together, but they definitely had some like a very close relationship. So he put her design in for Betty in this,
So it's sort
but
of
he's
baked
also
in to the concept of
yeah.
having real life. Well, sort of. I guess this isn't actually Betty Page, but
No, but it's also not Betty Page.
yeah. I like how she's on her tippy toes here, and she's kind of
Mhm.
pigeon toed as well. It's just a nice little effect because I guess is sorry Judy Garland is Judy Garland supposed to be like really short in real life?
Yes, I'm just gonna look it up now, but I'm almost certain she is like if she is
Five
over
foot
five
nothing.
feet tall, I'd be surprised. Yeah. It is slightly under. It is 4.9 feet.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Oh,
she's like
so about
I think she is like on
4'10",
the
4'11".
yeah, I think she's on the north of she's in between
She's
4'11" and 5 feet. So she is because she's
she's
notably small. She's the same height as Mickey Rooney, or she's about the same height as Mickey Rooney, and they did a bunch of Andrew Hardy shorts back in the day.
So I like this effect on the top panel here, where
Yeah, what's going on here?
he's flying over the city, and we've already seen a whole bunch of flying over the city shots. So I think this is playing with the iconography of Los Angeles, I guess, spotlights,
Okay.
and at least that's what I'm guessing. These are spotlights that he's like denoting that he's flying over the city.
Hmm.
I don't know if it fully reads, but it might just have been like saving time for deadlines, or it might have been always baked into his layouts and always his intent. But yeah, I found it a
Well,
very interesting
he
look.
does set it up. I think in the very first panel, he kind of sets up the use of spotlights because those were popular for premieres and promotional functions
Yeah, it's
in
just part of
especially in
the
LA.
iconography of those
Yeah,
early Hollywood days.
yeah.
So and
Also, he
yep.
nails he nails Betty Page and Judy Garland here too.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. So this panel right here, which is open, kind of like
Hmm.
interacting with the gutter space, that's a very recurring trope in his work that we'll see more of. But yeah, let's keep the show going and move on to the next one. He did a Batman Inc. special, Batman Incorporated special number one. So this one was written by Nathan Fairbairn and also colored by Nathan Fairbairn.
I was going to
Um,
say, yeah.
yeah, and I believe lettered by Carlos Manguel. But yeah, so yeah, this is an interesting short story of I guess it flashes back to present and past where he's talking to, I guess this character is talking to his what mentor figure. You know,
Like he's communicating with his dad.
okay, that's his dad. Okay,
Yeah, yeah. They're a father and son duo working on the reservation primarily.
and so the whole thing with Batman Inc. is that Batman has all these other Batmen out hunting criminals.
Yep,
Um,
yep. The Batman of Many Nations, I believe, is part of what it's called.
so yeah, this story is great because John Paulione is absolutely amazing at drawing cities. That's like one of the best
Sure is,
things
yeah.
he is good at. And so right here they're on a construction site where we get to see skyscrapers in the background and just like how precarious a situation this hero is by chasing this dude. There's some interesting like problems that always present themselves in these scripts. So in panel 2 he's lower than the villain and he comes up with this plan to somehow get higher than the villain. So by the time you get to panel 4 he's above the villain. So what do you do in between there? How do you fill that gap? He does a DeLuca effect where he has the character running across, sort of animated like to jump up, and then when you get to the next panel, he is above that character to the point where in the last panel he can jump down and
That's
attack him.
To Colin's point
and
earlier
I
about picking the right moments, I think this is a great example of that. Like the climbing.
I was gonna say it. You can have it.
Yeah, the
Panel
jump,
4 and
the run.
5.
Yeah, it's great. It's
Yes.
all like, oh, that's
Yeah.
what it looks like.
Here's an effect I like. When a character is falling, if you put a lot of negative space below them, like the more negative space you put, the better.
It makes you feel worse.
Yeah, you really get a sense of how precarious it is. Like
You're
I've
like,
seen,
oh shit.
Yeah, because
there's a very specific Sean Gordon Murphy page that I just adore, where like the character is in like the top left, and it's just nothing but negative space down to the rest of the page, and you just feel like that's going to be a long fall.
yeah, because it gives your mind somewhere for to put the figure. Like, oh, that's where they're going to go. I think it works with chasing as well, like side to side. You're supposed to do the same thing. If somebody's running after something, you should put like a bunch of space in front of them just to like, oh, that's where they're going. Okay, they will fill that
Mm.
space.
Yeah, I think Scott McCloud covered that in Understanding
Yeah.
Comics as well. But I want to speak to this. So this page, the page on the left, panel 1 and panel 4, you notice that there's a beam going straight down between and connecting the two panels. It shows a greater sense of scope
Oh shit.
of the
Yeah.
construction site that they're on. It's kind of like it shows that the space is actually quite huge, and it's crazy how he can
Yeah.
do that just by connecting those two panels with one single line.
Yeah. They don't even have to be necessarily like stacked. It's just like, oh, this is all linked as a gigantic space together.
Well, the cityscape in panel 4 lends itself to panel 1,
Oh, good call.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And also the sky behind, right? So yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is, yeah, that's the sort of thing that I am really trying to
Oh, that last panel there.
do better with like the drawings that we're doing for these and learn from is taking that sort of sense of I don't know how else to say it other than volume. I think there's a better way to say it, but just like the space, make
Mm,
the space feel more and lived in, like something that the characters can inhabit
mm,
rather than slapped on top of.
Yeah, and that's something that
right.
John Pauliane's a master of.
Yeah, he really is.
Something I'll say about like pretty much all of these short stories is the last panel is like a mic drop moment where like this is what I can
Yeah.
do as an illustrator, and yeah, this panel is no different. Like, this is pretty stunning.
Yeah, I drew a bunch of buildings for my illustration, and Oh boy, I don't feel good about them now.
Oh, and did you do it particularly because you were inspired by John Paul Leon's work
I
in
sure
these shorts?
was. Yep, I just added a little addition that I was like, oh right, this entire thing has just reminded me I was going to add something, and quickly tried to add it in. We'll see. We'll see how unsuccessful it is.
Okay, so next up is the American Vampire Anthology. So this has just a who's who of
Damn.
creators
Yeah.
in it. And so this came out in October 2013. What'd you guys think of this story?
I like this story a lot. When we were preparing for this episode, this is probably my favorite one.
Oh, yeah?
I think there's just way more of all the stories that we've looked at so far. The world building in this one, like this, takes you somewhere. You know,
Man,
it's
I mean,
just,
he's doing a lot
and you
of
don't and you don't want to be there.
there's just so much research he has to do for every one of these stories.
Yes,
Just like a
yes.
tremendous amount of research for like 6 pages or for 4 pages. And that's a thing about him, is that he was very research intensive. He did a lot of work ahead of time to prep. Yeah, I mean, it shows right off the bat. I love that he makes the ground wet.
Yep.
It really adds to the atmosphere of this,
It
because
does.
the other ones were superhero stories. This is a straight up horror story, and so he sets the mood right off the bat. And I should say Dave McKeag did the colors, and this was written by Greg Rucka with lettering by Steve Wands.
So for panel one, like I love that his work is all flat colors, but the lighting on the street there with the orange gold. He picks 3 different tones. Well, McKay picks 3 different tones to define the light hitting the street, but they're all perfectly separated, so it just all blends together. If you hold the comic book away from you, it all just blends together. It's like a nice golden sheen across the road. But then as you pull it close, you're like, oh, it's just 3 different colors.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Dave McKeag's probably one of the best in the industry as well. So, but here's an interesting thing. Like, oftentimes John Paul Leon has like sections of the background which sort of like merge with the gutter space, and like he keeps it pure white. But yeah, Dave McKeag colored all the gutters this sort of light green color.
Yeah, it is kind of this sickly green that's over not just the gutters, but almost just the page tone that he's then coloring over top of.
Yeah, the orange parts really pop against that the cool greens.
Eric, what is the thought behind dropping, like the floor and ceiling out? That's
a mystery to me. I don't know. I if I were to guess, I think it's very inspired by Alex Toth.
Okay.
I'm not 100% on that, but I think it's just he's trying to make an interesting looking page, because he talks about how Alex Toth is a huge influence of his, and how every page looks interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And there are certain sort of graphic things you can do to a page to just make the whole thing come together as a whole. And I think that might be the thinking behind this, but I mean, I'm not sure.
I was just thinking because we've talked before about like how do you know how much of the background to drop out when you and when you can, and just seeing examples of it and knowing why he's doing it.
The forever struggle, which is like how much detail and how much negative space.
Yeah, and if we could just find out why the guys who are good at it do it, maybe we can implement it better,
Oh yeah, because he's definitely one of the best. And yeah, here's another example where he has this open panel here. For these tall panels, I just look at this stuff and I'm just wondering, where is he getting this reference?
Yeah,
because it just looks so perfect. And
gangster movies, maybe.
I would
Tim
just
Burton
love
movie.
to know. I'm sure he had a very extensive reference library, and I know he took a lot of photography himself.
Okay.
Whenever he's in a big city or whatever, he would just take as much as possible. I believe. which is very evident when we see a lot of the Gotham based stories.
He's doing a good job of capturing the feel of the poverty row noirs. I think, especially in those two tall panels, those feel very like where the smaller poor studios would make quick and dirty film noirs once that became a notable thing. And yeah, it something about it makes me think that's what he's pulling from.
Yeah, and just so much thought. Like of course, there's going to be a rat there, so he's
Yeah,
going to draw a rat, and there's liquor bottles, and there's just like again, like he fills every setting with enough props and information that it feels like people were living there or working there or whatever. That's one of the things he's like the best at in my mind.
yeah.
So something I really like about the line work here is he doesn't do a lot of line work like this in his work, but he's operating in a horror story, and so he gets a lot messier with the lines, and it just gives a very horrifying vibe as this character is basically taking over the Shanghaiing business.
Mm-hmm. It is this close to the coolest thing the best art kid in your 8th grade class drew, but because it's John Paul Leon, it's so much better.
Oh yeah, just like expert inker.
Yeah.
Just it's I guess that perfect blend of spontaneity and control, which is something that I think he was a little obsessed with, which was he wanted the inks to look like that was the first time he had drawn it, even though he had drawn those panels like several times before by like roughing them out and penciling them and then tightening up the pencils, and then when he finally got to the ink, he didn't want to lose that energy, because like at each step of the process you lose more
It
energy,
always happens.
and
Yeah.
his goal was to make it look like it was the first time he drew it, and he would do all these little tricks, I think, to get that effect.
Do we know what tools he's using? Is this digital or is he going with
Oh no,
like
he's straight up traditional.
Straight up traditional.
is
Yeah.
he switching, cuz it kind of looks like he's actually using kind of a chisel pen, almost like a calligraphy pen, to get the different thicknesses of lines
Uh,
in quick short strokes.
for the spot blacks, he it looks like he does a lot of brush, but yeah, you're right. I think most of it is done by various pens. There's this Alex Toth podcast that he was on, and he talked about how he was experimenting with using.
Alex Toth podcast, you say?
Oh yeah, it's great. And it was just a fantastic interview with him. But yeah, he was experimenting with different pens, and he wanted kind of a flat line. And they had a picture of in the podcast of like something that looked kind of like this pilot pen. Yeah, and I think he was just very experimental and always trying to learn new techniques and play with new tools just to get different lines. And I think his priority was to go for the spontaneity look
Mm, yeah.
with every tool that he used. But moving on, there was a Vertigo anthology called CMYK, and there's 4 of them, one for each of the letters. So he got to be part of K.
Nice.
Did you guys know much about this short? It was nominated for an Eisner.
Did I catch this?
The black. Well, hang on. So this is the black and white Nazi.
Oh yeah.
Well, no, this is World War One. So,
not Nazi, but like World War One. Excuse me. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. But
I don't know anything about it.
So interestingly, this was nominated for an Eisner, and they actually released like the short story individually as its own comic for your consideration.
I mean, it's great. Yeah.
And I don't believe it won, but
well, and the art it feels like he really leveled up for this. And I don't say that to disparage like his previous work, but it feels like he really put himself into this. This is the level of detail that he brings to this story specifically is It's a real standout for me anyway.
And just so many different techniques being used. Like
Yeah.
how he differentiates between the foreground and background by adding this sort of splatter effect. And then right here he's using what is he using to
Dry
create
brush.
this? It could be a dry brush
I think it's dry
effect,
brush.
Yeah.
but
That's what I
yeah,
thought it was.
You know, like
Just like
I
pushing.
can get that kind of effect from a micron brush pen. Like if I dry it, if it gets dried out, you can still use it to
Oh,
kind of like blot down the
right.
Colin, you got to
long
get yourself
borders of.
one of these bad boys. Pentel Pocket Brush.
I've got one of those too. Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
saying once the pen's drying out, you can still use it
Yeah,
to
you can
achieve
get, yeah,
effects
you can
like
really
that.
push
this
and
this is in every
push.
artist's tool set.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, because you can push down and
Yeah.
get like the fibers to go out and just kind of drag and push around a little bit of ink. It's but it's super controlled too.
You were talking earlier, Taylor, about crowd shots,
Hmm.
and yeah, something amazing about illustration is it's just lines on a page, and John Paulione can put like blobs of black in there strategically, and then put strategic bits of white on there, and we can immediately interpret it as crowds of people because that's all this is. This is just like blobs
Yep.
of black.
Yep.
It's
You can
all
even
it's all light bouncing off the helmets. That's all
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, and he
Yeah,
even puts
it's
down
wild that you can tell that.
where the shadows are, like or where the sun is, or at least a strong light source, because you can see the
Yeah.
cast shadows from that middle group of
oh
soldiers.
yeah.
Yeah, the
Like,
bottom third of the panel there. Yeah.
yeah, like he's thought all of this out.
And so this is what I'm talking about when I say like a perfect blend of complexity and simplicity, because this is a
Mhm.
very complex page, but if you look at it up close, it's just a lot of black blobs.
Yeah, the crowd shot on the left hand side, a lot of that is just small little circles that he's just kind of going through.
Ah,
But he'll throw
yeah.
in a notable profile as well.
Yeah.
Well, if you look up
Uh,
top too, the flags hanging off the city or the off the building there, there's little speckles of white on
yeah.
the stripes.
And it's great creating depth because these are like foreground elements. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean it's just I mean I don't know what won the Eisner, but this definitely this definitely is Eisner worthy.
That middle panel there, again, the soldier lobbing the grenade. The first thing you see on that page, starting from the top, is the grenade. But as you move down,
Yeah.
you know that he's thrown it, and it's the perfectly picked moment in time where it's midair, and he's got he's completely completed the arc of his arm, lobbing the grenade.
And
Not
he's
only
reaching
that, but
for more.
The,
Yeah.
yeah, and the grenade is surrounded by negative space. That's the most important element of the screen because of the panel because it's like the element that's popping out at you, and then everything else is just more detailed. Just
And it's what becomes important story wise as well, because he becomes known for the reason he's so well known as Black Death, is because he just keeps hurling these grenades nonstop.
so this is written by Tom King, and actually it's lettered by John Workman, which as I said, the best John Paul Leon stuff is lettered by John Workman. John Workman stuff is just so aesthetically pleasing for me with these circular word balloons. But this is written by Tom King, and so it's got this interesting structure. Tom King is very structured in his writing. So the bottom tier middle panel for most of this short is a flashback,
Mm.
and then everything else is sort of present day for the most part. That structure gets kind of broken towards the end, but yeah,
As the
it's
character gets broken.
yes. And that flashback panel is always dirtier and grittier because yeah, he's in a foxhole, right?
I mean, not just a foxhole, he is in the
yeah.
trenches, which are the worst place on earth.
The wettest, the
It's,
most
yeah.
disease-ridden. Uh,
Yep, you're suffering trench foot and trench mouth. Good luck,
uh,
boys.
And so this is a true story, actually, of yeah, the Black Death was
That
a
sounds
real
right.
man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the reflection on the floor here, which is again something I stated earlier, is just like everything is always in the inks. Like I'm sure he knew this was going to be black and white, so he made some conscious decisions knowing it wouldn't be colored, but I'm sure it wouldn't be too far off from what he would do if it was colored.
Yeah.
Now here's another example where like the foreground is spot black, and then he doesn't put a lot of shadows on the background, just because the contrast allows the foreground figure to really pop.
Yeah. And yeah, and it goes to the feeling of the character as well. It's a great use of story and form.
Oh yeah, definitely. And he does that frequently actually, because there's another panel little later, like this person singing right here is like the darkest part of the page. So
Mm,
he's what we're looking at, even
yeah,
though like our main character is like right here,
right.
and so it makes it a little more clear when we zoom in and see him getting frustrated. And you know, part of the story is that he becomes homeless. He's this war hero that society doesn't necessarily treat very well when he gets
No,
back home.
no, they use them to sell war bonds, and that's it, or victory bonds, I guess now, and that's it. Once he stops being useful to them, they're thrown away. I
Yeah,
love
and
the use of the smoke in bottom right panel in the city.
oh yeah, very atmospheric.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, this is another one where he just had to do a tremendous amount of research to draw all this stuff. So,
Oh yeah.
moving on, what do we have next? There was this DC Beach Blanket Bad Guy Summer Special.
You know, for all the fans of 1950s Gidget movies.
Yeah. Wait, sorry, what's a Gidget movie?
Oh, it was like a kind of Gidget was a I don't know if she was an actress or a character, but it was like beach party blanket boys of summer. You know, it was surf movies became a very popular thing in the 50s. Elvis was in
Yeah, I
one.
was gonna say that feels like an Elvis. There was a bunch of Elvis movies.
But it was a huge trend because they were so cheap to make. It was, you know, a few sets, the beach, and a bunch of teens that you didn't, or 20-year-olds that you didn't have to pay that much. And they were a way to like promote new musical acts and stuff like that as well.
So going forward, the rest of the shorts we're gonna look at were colored by John Paul Leon himself. So
Oh, that's awesome.
he did the art and coloring. So this one was written by Paul Dini, and it was lettered by Darren Bennett, who I believe he's known for And World Designs. I think he's the founder of And World Designs, and it looks kind of like he's doing. Shoot, where looks a little bit like he's doing a John Workman impression, which is perfect if you're working with John Paul Leon. I mean, I'm all for that. What do you guys think of this short?
I thought it was great. This is
Oh yeah,
It was good. Yeah.
it's not a surprise that it was written by Paul Dini because I think our modern conception of Mr. Freeze, I'm not sure why he's not called Dr. Freeze. If I got a doctorate, I'd be calling myself doctor all the time. But the modern conception of him comes from the Batman the Animated Series that Paul Dini was working on. So
yeah. That's
um,
like the most iconic version of Mr. Freeze,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
the
much so that it's like, did
tragic hero.
the modern Batman take from the animated series? Like, is the modern is the
It did a bit.
Yeah,
yeah
yeah, because it just became
It
so
did a bit.
iconic, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because it added the
Uh,
complexity of he wouldn't be doing this if it were not for his cryogenically frozen wife. Like he is a villain who theoretically has an endpoint that if he can
mm,
steal enough money and do enough research, he stops doing this, which is, you know, not something that you see a lot.
mhm.
something I like about how he approaches Mr. Freeze is he has a very stiff acting throughout this entire thing.
Well, I would say actually to lend to that point, when he is being slightly more animated, his arms, for example, are very angular. They're just very sharply angled, and there's no real flow or line of action through them.
Yeah.
Like if you go to the next page, yeah, like there's one shot, yeah, right there. So the first panel on that page there, it's just like pretty much a 45 to 30-degree angle. His one
Yeah.
arm, and the other arm is just crossed over. It's a stiff pose. And he's got a stiff upper lip in that pose too,
It
Yeah.
kind of feels like
right?
he cast Patrick Stewart as
Oh
Mr.
yeah.
Freeze. Could you actually go back to the first
Yeah.
page? Oh no, sorry. It's the third page. Those bottom two panels on the right, I think that is a perfect setup and punchline. The just him saying and he's not angry. He's thrown off. He was not expecting to see whatever he's about to see. I thought, great bit of comedy.
Yeah, and so to speak to that, like, you know, when you're a comic artist, you have to design the entire world, and so in the script, he has to draw two competing ice cream truck companies, and that's what this is. This is, you know, one of these companies decide to rebrand themselves as a Mr. Freeze ice cream truck. So John Paulion is very good at drawing cities and very well researched things, but also he's right here. He needs to design a robot and design,
Yeah.
you know, the interior of this mech suit. And what's great is he's using the iconography of Mr. Freeze. He's got the dome head and the red eyes, and
That
it's
Mignola
like,
design.
is that a Mignola design from
It's
the animated
it's
series?
yeah.
Yeah, so in this case, like there was that jarring tire screech sound effect in the previous story, in the Rocketeer story,
Yeah,
I believe it was. But here, I think because of the lettering on the ice cream truck, I think it kind of helps that swoosh at the end kind of fit in a little bit more. And also the letters in that foosh sound effect, they're also a little bit more wavy, which I think helps.
yeah,
I
definitely.
think that the fact that it's not sharp, it's not pasted on. It doesn't look pasted on. It looks organic. It looks a part of the art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
He's dressed.
it's got the same thickness of line that John Paulion's line has, which is important. Oftentimes, when the digital sound effects look kind of pasted on, it's because it has a different line thickness as the original art, and it just sort of like sticks out. So here's another example of just an economy of lines. We've got these faces in
Oh
these
yeah.
uh,
Their
domes,
heat helmets. Yeah.
and it's just an economical use of lines to denote faces and hair, just as few lines as possible.
And the distortion of the glass. Or not
Yeah,
distortion, but like the cutting of detail of glass.
yeah, which again is like all in the inks. Like you
Yeah.
you don't necessarily need the colors to know that like you're getting an obscured view of that face.
And yeah, this is also, I think it's a great Mr. Freeze character story as well. Like, no, I picked the hottest day. Nobody's going to see us. We're testing it out in a very desolate part of town because he's not really interested in crush, kill, destroy all of Gotham. He doesn't he wants to limit the number of lives that he's going to affect here.
And in the end, he gets swayed by the great ice cream.
Yeah. Yeah, the shaved ice.
So yeah, I think he does the best gloves in comics. John Paulion. I think whenever he has a
Oh,
figure
interesting. Okay.
that's an interesting
wearing gloves,
observation.
I yeah, I think actually Olivier Coipel is high up there as well. But I mean, like, look at this.
That's true.
That's
Yeah.
a
That
glove.
is all black.
Yeah.
It's basically a silhouette, and it's unmistakably a glove. Like
Yeah.
those aren't just regular fingers. And yeah, that's something I've noticed about all his work. Is just he's so good at drawing these gloves
Oh
with a
yeah.
minimal amount of lines.
Yeah, cuz he gets the Because since you brought that up from our Coipel episode, I've been thinking about what does make a glove look different from a hand, and it's that in gloves, you typically have, unless it's like latex or something, you have actually more room to move inside the glove before it
Yeah.
is affected by your movements. So, like something like this just becomes like becomes a lot smoothed out, and it's just less bent, even though the fingers inside are can be curled.
And that's the thing about like thicker clothing.
Yeah,
Um, it just like bends a lot less than like thinner clothing.
yeah,
So yeah, just very impressive drawing of these thick
yeah.
gloves
The
because
mom holding her finger up, like
yeah,
that's great.
yeah, so good. And again with like ending on a very spectacular panel right here with I guess Mr. Freeze I
Their
guess got
corner.
rid of the competition.
Yeah,
And like just how this truck fits in with the lamppost, just beautiful.
yeah. It's threaded through this truck.
And to have this city shot and to have the big mech walking away and perfectly framed by these buildings here and all this negative space. Yeah, just great composition.
Also realizing how it's interesting that he was chosen for this bright, sunny, middle of the day story, which is
Yeah.
not what I
Yeah.
typically associate him with. I think of him as like the dead of night.
Yeah, this last panel too, the corner, the bottom right corner, that woman with the bicycle. I think that she was essential to finishing this shot. If you had all the figures kind of off to the left like that, I think it would have felt a little bit more empty. I think him placing that woman with her
Mm.
bicycle there at the very end, just above the end caption, I think it really completed it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. It gives a sense of scale for the buildings that are framing him. Yeah, yeah. You're
I
right.
love
Good
yeah,
call. Good
and
call.
I love this top bit here too.
It's an
He don't need
awning.
to add this, but
Yeah,
he's doing what he can to frame this.
yeah,
Yeah.
Like that this was very intentional as a framing device.
yeah.
Like he's just an expert at composition. Oh, I can't get over how good he was. It's just such a
Yeah,
shame.
he was a master.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got like three more to go. So the
This
next
one.
one was in another anthology. It was called DC Crimes of Passion, which was also reprinted in the Batman Catwoman special, which was sort of that special was commemorating the life of John Paul Leon. But yeah, so this was written by Ram V with again, or actually, I was going to say again Darren Bennett, but no, it was credited with And World Design. So Darren Bennett, I think, runs And World Design. So if it's credited with And World Design, it would have been somebody else, I
Mm.
believe. This came out April 2020.
All right.
This story is insane in a frightening way. And what I mean by that is if somebody like the Question actually existed, like he would terrorize the city.
Yeah.
Just the city speaks to me. It loves me and I hate her. The bitch. I'll get her to I'll change her for the better. Like it's so weird. He's so
So you like
It's like
Rorschach?
Rorschach,
yeah,
yeah.
but in an even weirder way. I don't even know because Rorschach is like what a I think Rorschach appeals to teen boys so much because because it appealed to me when I was a teen boy. So much because it's like, oh yeah, that's what a real fucking hero is. It's like, is the Question a hero? He's more of a stalker of the city he lives in. It's so weird.
He's an inquisitor.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's just so yeah. That is a good way of describing him. Yeah, like is he a hero? He's an inquisitor. I'll give him that. He finds answers.
So I mean, I'll just say right off the bat, any time John Paul Leon is drawing any story that's in a big city, that's like when he's in top form. I
Yeah.
just love how he draws these big major metropolitan cities. And again, just a lot of blacks. And it's deceptively simple, but also just so layered and so complex. And you even get these it's such interesting buildings because you get these round elements here, and yeah, I mean, I just love it so much.
Yeah, it definitely looks like the rooftop apartment of a bougie asshole from built in the 1980s, which is what a gangster's son is.
So yeah, I mean, look at this right here. This is him wandering through the city over like 2 pages, and the city is just so bustling, so alive,
Mm-hmm.
just so much going on. And like, there's always that cliche of like the city is another character, and I don't know if you can say that about this particular story, but like, he's doing so much with this city that it might as well be another character. Even when he's just has these characters wandering around, there's just always so much going on in the background. This panel I just love so much. There's just so much going on in the city, and the question is just in the background, just wandering around. Because
Yeah, and him stalking the faceless guy. I think is it one up? Yeah, just kind of just missing each other.
oh yeah,
It's very well blocked, I guess would be the term. Like he's blocked out their route very very well.
and like, he could just draw a regular road,
Yep.
but this is a major city that has had the road built and rebuilt, and it's fallen apart, and they've repaved it, and so there's remnants of old brick, and then there's pavement over top of that.
Looks like an Italian sidewalk. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and yeah,
Or
I just
Portland.
love all the little city details.
Yeah.
Well, just like every city is that. Like, well, older cities, you have like the old brick,
Yeah.
the brick roads, but then to fix them, you don't put more brick on them, you just you pave over them.
Yeah. You
And so
slap
you
some
get this
asphalt
like
in there.
patchwork.
Yeah.
And I actually love drawing cities myself, so that's why I respond so much to this, and why he's one of my favorites, because of just how good he is at this stuff. And I mean, I don't even come close to this, but I have ambitions. So here we have another open panel, and this is just gives me Toth vibes right here. This particular
Yeah.
panel, you guys see the same thing?
Yes, absolutely. And again, he picks the right
Oh,
moment. The way his legs
Yep.
are strafed like that, it's mid jump, mid flight, whatever you want to call it.
yeah. Yeah. He's about to start heading down, but he is at like the apex of that jump.
Mm.
It's yeah.
Yeah,
Again,
perfectly posed.
yeah, and yeah, just a great choice of the moment.
This is an interesting element where it's just two very blacked out figures, and so he has to create this halo effect around just to make it clear. But I mean, his goal, as I said earlier, is to create that spontaneous look, like he was drawing it for the first time. And I do get that vibe from this, because there is such imperfection here.
Mm-hmm.
It's that mix of like expert level, but also like spontaneous and a little like messy, where you get like lines crossing over each other. And yeah, again, that perfect blend of like perfection and imperfection, complexity and simplicity. It's just a mess of contradictions.
I believe that term is called elegance, simplicity.
Yes.
Yeah. But this fight, just this one page, is so well choreographed. Like when he gets the drop on him, and the guy
Yep.
he kicks them out of the way, and then you see the futility of his punch when he goes to punch him in panel 3. He gets taken down in the 4th panel. It's all just perfectly set, right? You know exactly what's going on. There's no confusion whatsoever.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and great punching pose. That's a real that's a boxer.
Well,
look
even
to that punch.
even the guy he's
It's not
punching, he's stepped out of the way just enough, right? Like it's a good
Yep.
laid punch by the
Oh yeah,
question,
good call. Yeah,
but
he's just
he
kind of-
moved out of the way just in the nick of time so he could take him down, right? He's skilled himself.
yeah.
Oh yeah, so good. And also, like, look at the shadows on the question's face. These aren't the more conventional way of like lighting.
It's got to be
shadow.
so hard to do that face, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like, do you do the sockets, the empty sockets, and the nose, or
Well,
what do you do? But
Cully Hamner did a backup in Detective Comics. It was a question story, and he used just a dark. So the question's mask is all beige, and for the definition of
mhm.
just the eye holes and just under the nose, it was like a darker beige, and that's what he did even in
Oh,
dark
okay.
scenes and stuff like that. So. Yeah, I mean, everyone has their own method of doing it, but I think I prefer Leon's method using blacks.
Yeah, yeah,
Just like interesting shapes,
Yeah.
because
yeah.
Well,
that's something he was all
it
about. Just
is.
like
Yeah,
shapes
it's
and using graphic looking shapes.
it is just a mask that's covering your whole face, but like the indentations of your eye holes and under the nose and in your mouth, like you can get some really nice shadows from there if you know what you're doing. I mean, in this case, I mean he did it perfectly.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah. And he might have had reference. Yeah, I'm not sure, but
He put some
it looks
pantyhose
beautiful.
over his
That's the
head,
thing I am
took a
sure about.
picture of himself. Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is another thing is like he's an expert with blacks, but also with whites and just how much negative space he's putting on the page. Because like going back to that DMZ short where we were a little unsure about why
Yeah.
there was so
Mhm,
much negative
mhm.
space, this is unmistakable that he wanted this red to really pop and be powerful against this white.
Oh yeah, yeah. In this, I take all of the white space as the panel for the heart-shaped blood spatter.
Yeah, and I like the symmetry of this bottom part,
Hmm.
and also the color variation of I guess we have the tragic present, which is in cool blues, and then we have like the happier, more pleasant past, which is in warmer colors,
Mm.
I
and
also
it's very
love
effective.
I also love this part where you find out the only person that a narcissist can love is someone who looks exactly like themselves.
It's kind of poetic, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is actually my favorite panel here. This tall panel, like it, yeah,
Because of the negative space.
yeah, it, and again, just like most of this is black. Like this fire escape,
Yep.
it's just the silhouette of it, and then carefully placed white areas. So it is oddly simple. Yeah, and just the white is so effectively used. Like he colored this himself, so he was thinking about all this stuff while he was inking it. And here's another example of simplicity and complexity. These bricks, he takes the cement areas and just adds little blobs, just to add
Mhm.
details, just to add a little more texture to the brick wall. And it is always interesting when he chooses not to black out the face and when he chooses to black it out. Because
Yeah.
if I was to speculate, it's, right here you have a white background, and so the foreground should have more blacks, and right here you have a black background, so you don't need to add any lighting on the front.
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, the face gets lost in the shadow behind it.
And it's easy to, I guess, fall in love with the design of just like, okay, I know there's going to be shadows on his face, so every time I draw the question, there's going to be shadows on his face. And it's easy to just like, you know, what do you get? You fall into a pattern.
Mm.
But no, there's like constant thought being put into this.
Right. Yeah. He's not wedded to what is supposed to be. He's not saying no. The face of the question is done like this. It's like he's approaching the design in each panel anew, which man, I wish I had the guts to do that. You know, there are times when I'll try it and then kind of back off thinking, but is that bad for continuity? And I mean, maybe it is for my skill level, but not when you're John Paul
Mm.
Leone.
Yeah, he just knows what he's doing. So we
Yeah.
got two more to go. So this one is from Batman Secret Files number 3, which was also reprinted in James Tynion's first Batman Volume 1 trade paperback. So it came out in Batman Secret Files number 3 in August of 2020, and written by Dan Waters with Darren Bennett lettering, and then yeah, everything else John Paul Leone. So what do you guys think of this one?
It was great.
Well, so
Uh,
off the bat, I want to just say this is what I was comparing. The simpler stuff he does well, not simpler stuff, but like less defined in his independent stuff,
Oh
like
yeah, this one's
DMZ,
way more complex,
compared
eh?
to this. Yeah, the Batman costume, he has a lot more to work with. He has a lot more that he can, like the cape, the cowl, even the definition of like his,
Yeah.
of just his muscles and everything. He has a lot more to play around with in this than, in DMZ or any of the other independent stuff that he did.
Well, I mean, that was also 10 years before this. This is in 2020, and that DMZ one was 2010. So that's probably
There's
just his
also,
growth, his natural growth as
But
an artist.
and I
it's
think
also what you're
the
given, though, as
design.
an
I think
artist.
you're right. Yeah,
Like the
Potentially, yeah.
eyes of his
yeah.
cowl and the American flag mask, like just stuff like that. There's a lot more, I would say, colorful, and by colorful I mean like complex characters with a lot more props on their body. Whether they're guns or
Oh, yeah.
gadgets and things that they're using. The capes, obviously. There's a lot more to do, and I think I'm gonna say, like, he probably had a blast doing a Batman comic. I'm sure he grew up doing. Like, he's done a lot of Batman stories, but I'm sure he loved drawing superheroes or mainstream characters like that.
Yeah, everyone loves drawing Batman, right?
I hate it.
Yeah.
Seriously?
I do. Yeah, I can't get that cowl right at all. It sucks.
You just
Well,
gotta
it
you
depends on
gotta figure it out in the sketch phase first. To draw it 1,000 times in the sketch phase, and then you got it.
Pretty much. Yep. I'm halfway there.
But
I
yeah,
think it comes down to the
look at the
ears.
more
That's
to
the
speak to
problem.
the
Yeah.
what you were saying, Colin. Look at how more complex the gloves are here. Like what we were showing off before was way more simplified gloves. But again, this panel might be bigger than a lot of those panels we were looking at before, so it's more of a close up. But yeah, to speak to what you're saying, yeah, there is a lot more detailed rendering going on here.
Detailed rendering.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah.
There's also some hatching. There's some hatching in the background.
Oh yeah, instead of like straight blacks.
And
But
on
yeah,
Yeah.
the chair. Yeah.
this is
But even
art
on
art
the
deco,
couch.
right?
It is. You can tell because
Yeah.
it looks like it was made by dwarves.
Yeah, I remember you said that before, but what does that mean?
Oh, it's okay. So the idea is that dwarves live underground, so they're carving these angular chunks out
Oh,
of,
okay.
and Art Nouveau looks like elves made it, so it's all thin and spindly and kind of floral based.
Okay. Yeah, but this particular font for the Wayne, that's also associated with Art Deco, which I guess it's straight lines. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, their responses. One is a response to the other. I want to say it's the exact sort of thing you would expect from two French styles of a rivalry between styles.
So, and there's a long history of people using Art Deco for Gotham, right? Is there?
Burton did.
Yeah, I think it's a
Yeah.
Burton thing.
Well, I thought Burton's whole thing was that he had all these clashing styles just to make Gotham grotesque.
Hmm.
I'd have to revisit to comment.
Yeah, I specifically remember he was just like make it as ugly and grotesque as possible, have clashing styles. But I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think of this couch? I just love it so much. Like you can feel that couch right there.
Mhm.
I'm gonna say something that might not be popular.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones with a free sign on it on the some guy's driveway, some guy's front lawn.
It feels out of place to me. I don't
Well,
know why.
this
I think
is-
it's the hatching.
Yeah. I mean, we're not used to seeing a lot of like even this
It's-
cross hatching.
It's not that. It's like it's on the couch itself. Yeah, all of that feels strange to me. I don't.
Maybe
I don't
that's
know
just
why.
him playing. Like that's
Yeah.
the thing. He was always growing as an artist, and he was just playing with new textures and new ways to like. I know what he's going for. Like we've all seen a couch with a texture like that, and mostly it's less about what it looks like and more what it feels like, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Like what
the
that couch
design of
feels
it
like.
is great. It's what this dirtbag and all dirtbags sit on. As Colin said, it's got a free sign on it, so this dirtbag grabbed it.
Yeah, so that's another thing. You're a comic artist, and yeah, you do all the reference, and so this is what, like, I guess is a courthouse or something, because this is where the security people are, and the check-in or
That's got to
something,
be
or maybe
something
yeah,
out of Dark Knight
um,
Rises.
yeah, and so
Yeah,
the thing is, you can do all this research and make it immaculate, but you also have to like design these like gun devices that these automated gun devices as well. Like, there's just so much work that a comic artist has to do,
and
and
Yeah,
for
he
an
nails it.
there's
amateur like gunsmith, you have to get those guns right.
Oh yeah, and they
but
look like legit guns.
Yeah. What are
but
you gonna say?
the tripods that they're sitting on too, they actually have proper mechanics and hydraulics for being posted that way. Like
Yeah,
I've worked construction, and I can
Hmm.
see that. Yeah,
just like I'm not an
there's actual
engineer.
right, but you can see that it's something that works. Something
Yeah,
with
Yeah.
exactly. Like, I'm not an engineer, and I'm when I'm tasked with drawing something like this, what am I supposed to do? But yeah, I guess
You got to do a Google search for automated gun turret, and then you get
just,
put on a bunch of
yeah,
lists, and
get on
it's
a
a whole
watch
thing.
list. What did you think of this one, Taylor?
I love this whole comic. It's great. I was surprised they had the guts to do it. To because they like Batman knowingly hates guns, but how often do they bring up and America loves guns?
Yeah,
And then to
yeah.
have gunsmith with the American flag underneath, it's the sort of it's it. You know what it is? It reminds me of Denis Villeneuve's filmmaking, like where it's just like, here's what it is, elegantly. Like I'm
Well,
going to
I mean,
give you this message elegantly. There's no confusing it, but you're like, but this looks very good, great.
well,
Yes,
interestingly enough, this
yeah.
is written by a Brit, so it's always like the outsider perspective that is the most cutting, probably.
Mm.
yeah,
But yeah, I like this. I always like when he does these open panels, like this one down here, where it goes into the gutter space, and I always wonder, like, why did he choose that panel? Like, I mean, yeah, it's probably obvious. I guess
well,
it's
because you get Batman and his ultimate enemy, the gun, right?
right, yeah. And
But
I guess it's all the other ones required kind of a background, whereas this
yeah,
one, everything's been established by this point.
There's also the sparseness of captions and word balloons and all the other panels, but that one specific panel with the negative space has the most word balloons,
good
or at
call.
least the
Yeah.
biggest word
Right,
balloons,
yeah.
right? So he's
So
giving
it
it
by
room so you can
necessity
actually
he
take
needed
in
that.
information.
Yeah.
Right.
This final panel here on the page on the left. I mean, that's supposed to be like a gunshot, I guess. Like, what is that? The panel breaking?
So this is what I was going to ask you guys. So is it the panel breaking apart, or is it the gunfire, and he's only defying certain corners of the
Oh,
explosion of the gunshot?
good question.
Which do you think it is?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but either way, it's unique.
That's, I'm like, I'm gonna
Yeah, you
stoke these
have because now I'm
motherfuckers.
thinking because I was thinking about it as the gunshot, but now I think, God, I think you're right. I think it might be like the panel itself has been exploded from a gunshot.
But at the same time, I think you would not think that if that right corner, that perfect 90-degree angle shot, if that was not there,
Yeah.
you wouldn't even think that it was the panel breaking apart. I
Oh,
think you
so
would
that's
actually
intentional
think it was
then.
more of the gunshot explosion. It was just
Then
could
yeah,
be,
I mean,
or it's just fucking with your head. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's probably him being experimental and trying something new, and maybe it doesn't fully work,
Well,
or maybe it does. But
here's
either way, he's doing something that nobody else has done before, as far as I can see, and it's very cool.
Well, I would say to that is that you don't feel any which way about it because it works regardless, right? It's the final
Yeah.
panel. He does shoot,
Yeah.
and then very quickly you can see what the aftermath is from that panel. Panel one, he's getting shot. So he obviously pulled the trigger. You don't really feel any which way of, oh, did the panel break apart, or is there some kind of metaphysical thing he's getting at? No, it's
It's a
just
feeling.
he obviously
Yeah.
pulled the
Yeah,
trigger.
and then
Regardless, yeah, it's a
by the
feeling.
time you get to
Exactly.
the next panel, you have this very powerful red and black
This
that really sells.
rocks. This
Yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah.
I do, but before we go to that, I just wanted to point out. I noticed the in the top panel on the left page, just half of the courthouse just
Yeah.
dropped out completely, but you don't notice it because of you get the cape and all of those word balloons. I mean, you
Yeah,
notice, but
and
it's not bothersome, I guess.
and what's interesting is like these pages here are very busy. There's a lot
Mhm.
going on, and I kind of like the use of white, the extra white on the each the top corner and the bottom corner. It's very aesthetically pleasing to me, and I don't even know if that was intentional, but
You know, sometimes I feel as artists age, there are things that they do instinctively that as when they were
Yeah.
younger they did intentionally. You know, it's just becomes second nature to them to be like, yeah, because that's how it works. How else would you do it? There is no
yeah,
other way.
I see that as lately I will instinctually come up with a page layout and then I'll tell myself, no, let's try it again. Let's come up with something better. And then oftentimes I go back to that first instinctual approach and I don't even know why it worked, but somehow it just came out of me.
Yeah, because you know
So
comics.
just
Mm,
funny that way.
mm.
And then we get these pages look a lot more busy. I love this very graphic grappling hook effect he does here,
Yeah,
which again goes into the gutter space and is very effectively using the white, but it's just so pleasing to the eye, I suppose. And then
it's
look,
difficult to show it coming out, right? The grappling hook, but
yeah,
he does
and
it.
yeah, and then I guess these explosions come out into the gutter space as well, like very effective use of the white.
Hmm.
And have you ever seen gunfire that looks like this before?
No,
Does anybody else draw it like this? Because like when you're a
no.
comic artist,
No.
you have to come up with a language for visuals. And like one example of a language for visuals that like we all have to draw eventually is gunfire. How are you going to draw gunfire? And there's like 100 ways you can do it. That's the beauty of the language of illustration. And I just find it so cool because the best kind of like language for gunfire is something that gets the point across and also just looks great. And yeah, this looks amazing. It's just so
Yeah.
visually striking.
Well, I do like that he's employing. So they're all. We can assume they're all using the same type of gun, and he's employing that same four flame
Yeah.
shot from the gunpowder, and at every angle the gun is shooting. Well, various guns are shooting, but so at every angle, that cross or that X is kind of being shifted, and it becomes flatter and flatter and flatter until it gets to like right in your face.
Yeah.
You see the one directly in the foreground where it's just a giant
Yeah.
crosshair
Yeah. So
effect.
it creates a three dimensionality to it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good observation
exactly. Yeah,
because usually you'd see like, you know, what does a muzzle flash actually look like? Because you can find that reference, no problem.
Oh yeah.
But you're right, Colin.
yeah.
It's like the X, the dimensionality, and I initially thought I was thinking of like little blades, but now I'm thinking of it like no. It's coming like this is where it's coming for the Batman.
I think I'm going to steal this.
You heard it here first, folks. Watch out for it in Assorted Crisis Event.
On this other page, there's a great use of foreground elements. Where we get this batarang right in front,
Oh
and
yeah.
even better than that, we have this grappling hook coming out of the panel and grabbing there. Like there's stones that he's landing on, but there's stones out of the panel in the foreground, and it just like beautifully creates again that three dimensionality.
Yeah.
So like you said, Leon draws the best gloves in the business. Panel 2 on the second page there shows
Oh
it.
yeah.
And one thing that I can say when I see things like that grappling hook hitting the pebbles on the rooftop, you can hear the pebbles skittering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the impact of metal
Yeah.
on rock. You can just hear that sound as you're reading it. And I'm glad they didn't put any sound effects on this page. This is actually like this. It doesn't need it at all.
Oh
I think it would
yeah.
have taken away from
Yeah, there's no
everything.
sound effects. I didn't clock that. You're right. Yeah, the gunfire isn't making any noise. Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Right, because it's all Gunsmith's self narration, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's I guess.
that's what we're watching is his memory of this. Huh.
And yeah, look at Batman's gloves. It's just so good. Yeah, does
Yeah.
anybody else, can
More
you think of anybody
gloves.
else who draws gloves as good as this?
You know what? I'm gonna say Mike Mignola does.
Mike Mignola does great gloves. That's
Yeah,
true. He gets the
Yeah,
shape down.
Lobster
It's
Johnson's
it's about the
gloves are the
shape.
best. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Oh, JPL doing Lobster Johnson. Fuck, that would have been great.
It's an
Yeah.
interesting way to end this where he's like walking away while talking to us. And then we get this sort of victory shot of Batman from, I guess, the perspective of the police
Yeah,
on the street.
yeah. It's pretty somber. It's a real downer. Of like, yep, the gunsmith got away.
Yeah, yeah, and I just get the sense that like he is at the top of his game, John Paul Leon. Just like how much detail he's putting on the page, and just the perfection of the composition, just on all aspects. He's like just
Yeah.
growing so much as an artist by the time he gets here. And yeah, we have the last short story of the night, which is Catwoman number 25. When news came out that he had died, like this was my version of mourning. I went to the comic shop and tried to buy as many John Paul Leon comics as I could, which I
Right.
have a bunch over there. But yeah, I mean, I was so heartbroken. And yeah, one day we'll look at these Batman comics. But the short story in the back of this comic is one of my favorite works of art that he's ever done. What did you guys think of this story?
I fucking loved it. This
Yeah, it was
is
great.
my favorite
Uh,
one.
Yeah.
this so
Here
I'll
we go.
just say though, when he did pass away, I was struck by it because it was like I felt like the best was yet to come with that
Yeah,
guy,
Yeah.
right?
definitely.
Like his opus had not yet been completed. Whatever it was going to be,
Well, it
we'll never see it now.
now it's Winterman,
Now it has to be Winterman. Now it
Yeah.
has to be Winterman,
which
right? Um,
is a good opus if you're gonna have one. But yeah, so this was written by Ram V and colored. Oh, I thought John Paul Leon colored this, but no, it was colored by
FCO colored it.
FCO Placencia.
FCO.
That's interesting. He is the Capullo colorist on Batman.
Yeah, he just goes by FCO now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
And
think that
it's
stands for
quite
like
a
Federico something or other.
yeah. And this is such a different
So do
vibe in the colors.
this is the vibe you got to go with John Paul Leon because
Look
like
at this city.
all the work is in the inks, and so all he needs is these flat colors. Although
Yeah.
there is a bit of I
There's
can't tell if
there's
that's
a
like texture
gradation
by the
there.
colorist or if it's texture from the leftover from the artboard. I believe that's from the colorist.
No, it's
probably.
texture from the colors, I think.
Yeah,
And I don't
he's
like
creating
it.
more shadows here. You
Yeah.
don't like it? I think it's beautiful.
No disrespect. No disrespect. But I don't like it.
So this gorgeous page again highlights the again complexity and simplicity because you have this very complex city and then you have this huge panel with a lot of negative space
Yeah.
of her just holding keys, and
Yes.
it's just the whole page is aesthetically pleasing. I want to own this page, the original art.
Yeah. I do think though that an artist can only get away with something like that if the first panel is actually quite detailed the way it was in that. So you can afford to shave away a sliver of the page to do a shot with a hand holding the keys. I
Oh
don't think
yeah.
that would work any other way. Yeah. You could even have had that as the bottom panel shot, her holding the keys, just the hand holding the keys. You could have had that take up the whole bottom of the page, but it's an interesting choice that he chose for it to do a vertical shot rather than a horizontal.
That is interesting because I don't think that would instinctually be what I would choose. But actually, no. You know what? It makes sense because he's trying to get the majesty of this city and show how big these buildings are and how high up she is, and you need a tall panel for that.
And the
Well, I
tall
mean,
panel of the keys draws your attention to the keys. Like, pay attention to these.
Yeah, it just
yeah,
looks so
because
good.
I think if you did a horizontal bottom shot, he probably would have had the hand hanging by her side, kind of like by her pocket. It would have been hanging
Mm,
instead of being this like horizontally. The keys are being held this way. She would have held them down.
yeah, she's
The keys would have
holding.
been
Yeah, she's
dangling, right?
she's looking at
Yeah,
them.
That's what a horizontal shot probably would have looked like, or at least that's how I would have done it. But it's interesting that he chose a vertical shot for this, and she's holding up the keys essentially there.
yeah. And I love the little details about this city is alive. So you have the birds here, then you have the smoke, and
Ugh, the
yeah,
smoke.
again, just
Yeah,
very lived in, just so good.
yeah.
And
R.I.P. once again. God.
so even with these, you look at this, and he's got even this tiny panel where you have simplified Catwoman walking by, but look at how interesting the architecture is, even when it's just a far away panel. Like it's everything just looks interesting. All the city elements just look interesting.
Yeah, it has the feel of something like New York, where they just threw like they built buildings. Some got torn down and replaced with new ones, new styles. It's
And they'll clash.
yeah, but they still feel a part of something. It's I don't know how he does it,
So
as we will see at the end of this episode.
oh yeah. So I mentioned earlier he was on this like Alex Toth podcast, which is really good, and I'm so grateful that that podcast exists because somebody interviewed John Paul Leon probably like less than a year before he died, and so we get that history, we get his thought process. And while he was on that podcast, he was talking about the art that was in front of him and the current struggle that he was going with. Like none of this was was incredibly easy. He would draw panels and then he'd question, is this the right way to go about it? He described this panel, actually. He described a panel where a purse is being stolen. And uh, I mean, I don't know if he was talking about this panel here or if he was talking about the actual panel where the purse was being stolen, but he mentioned that he drew an elaborate background and he questioned whether he should keep that background, whether it's like taking away from, I guess, the action, I
Mm,
think. And all I know is there's no background on this. So did he draw a background and then finally decide that no, this needs to be erased? I'm not sure.
I mean,
I think it
it
still works
works,
better
right?
without it. Yeah,
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 good
and
creative choice on his part.
yeah, because we have all the information we need here in these first two panels,
yeah.
and yeah, it just works so much better when all you're focusing on is the action, where there's no like noise interrupting the flow of that.
Hmm.
And that's what he was concerned with, I believe.
I love the Catwoman pose in the bottom left corner of that page.
Yeah, just frustration, right?
My purse! Oh no!
Yeah, I there's all these little things I like how she's holding this watch that she stole. She's like stretching the elastic of it,
Yeah.
and then we have the frustrated pose here, which is great. And yeah, again, like I love how he draws streets with these like remnants of bricks
Hmm.
amidst all the concrete of just like Yeah, he was just so good at drawing city stuff. And I think on his like social media, he posted roughs of this stuff or works in progress of some of these pages. I'm happy he provided the world a view of some of that stuff.
Everything is just so busted and janky. It looks uh, just like a barely maintained city. It's so good.
Oh yeah, like stuff is falling apart here, and you got like dirt and stuff there. This is how like when I draw cities, I try to channel this stuff. And so here we have like I guess he was tasked with designing the Nest, Alleytown, which I think this was like Catwoman's new status quo
This
for the
is a
Ram
great
V
design.
run.
Yeah. Yeah. For her to have this kind of central hub of her criminal empire up top, all cobbled together.
Yeah,
It's a
just a
more
messy.
glamorous tent city.
Yeah.
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 That tent
That's
city's going up
exactly what it
around
is.
North America now. It's
Yeah.
essentially that on top of a skyscraper. I think that's not well, that's not a skyscraper, but it's a high
Well, it
rise for
looks like
sure.
it's high up. Yeah, it's a high
Yeah,
rise.
it
Yeah.
does feel high up. I got to ask you though, because I was thinking about this as reading, because this is the latest one. It feels like he is dropping some detail out in the same way that Mignola does as he goes. Does
Right.
that scan for anybody else? It
Well, I mean, he was one of his biggest influences was Toth, was
mhm,
Alex Toth, and Alex Toth had this sort of like obsession with simplicity and with dropping out all the unnecessary stuff. And I think John Paul Leon was very concerned with that too, with like
okay.
trying to achieve that simplicity somehow. But I mean, I think he just, I mean, he clearly just loves drawing detailed backgrounds. Just lived in sort of like messy backgrounds. Like you gotta love drawing this stuff to do it this much.
Yeah, yeah,
And
like putting
so
that.
how are you supposed to like how are you supposed to embrace simplicity if you love that?
Yeah, you're right. The human figures just kind of they have a lot of their detail dropped just so that they pop against that.
It is interesting now that I'm looking at this. John Paulion would not have colored it with these highlights on the jacket.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
And I love the texture background actually through the window, but I don't think John Paulion would have colored it that way either. I love Catwoman's introduction here because, like, yeah, we're what like 4 pages in and we haven't seen Catwoman yet. We saw
Yeah.
Selena Kyle, but and she's just so confident in her pose here, and he draws her high up because she's, I guess, in charge essentially, and trying to show that she's in charge, and just like no fear, just like these are just punk kids, and she's showing
Yeah.
them that she's in charge. So good
He
staging there.
offers a lot
Yeah,
more. He offers a lot more definition to her costume too. Again, because there's a
yeah.
lot more to work with.
This is great. I was mentioning earlier that like if you have an action and you can add like extra elements outside of that action, like for instance here, she's opening a window, and then the extra element are the birds flocking away. So you feel that motion a lot more because of those extra elements.
Right out of a John Woo movie.
Mm,
Yeah, are these
yeah,
doves?
They're certainly colored like them.
I'm pretty sure they're
uh,
pigeons.
some interesting detailing with her leg here. I guess trying to get that like latex texture.
Right, yeah.
The Michelle Pfeiffer look.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
and
stitched look.
we've got we got to comment on the gloves here. So we've got the
Yeah.
gloves with the claws. But yeah, look,
Yeah.
the whole thing looks gorgeous, and always have to have a mic drop final panel, right? Like,
Wow.
look at this, just gorgeous.
Anyway, don't forget, I fucking rock when I draw city shit.
I with the colors, this shot makes the book the makes the story for sure. This is my
It
Jeremiah
does, yeah.
Johnson moment where I look at FCO and I'm like, you know, yeah. This shot makes it all work. The flats
Yeah,
on the pigeons, in contrast to just the
Oh yeah.
bricks and the awnings outside, the red awnings, and yeah, this shot works.
Okay, so for issue 5 of our Starter Crisis events, there was a page where I had to draw birds, and there was a detailed background in birds, and something I learned with that, like I drew detailed birds, and it just did not work. And then I looked at not this, but a bunch of other artists, and just like no detail, just have the shape of a bird, and I can't explain it, but it just works,
Mm.
and
Yeah,
everybody does it. So I'm sure there's some sort of explanation out there, but like I'm seeing it
yeah.
here
Less is
again, like,
more.
oh, here's another artist who does that. Well, it's not about less is more. I don't know what it is. It's just like if you have a detailed background and then you also have birds, it just works the best if you have like what are you doing right now, Taylor?
Nothing. I'm not coloring in anything that that I should have colored in earlier.
Well, I can't wait. um, anything else to say about this before we get to the piece of art that Taylor has in front of him?
Oh God, take it away from me.
Okay, I just want to comment on the floor. Like,
Oh yeah,
just so
it's.
so interesting looking.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
say I really appreciate the use of. Can you kind of go up the page a bit so we can see the more of the kind of back alley? This is small, but his use of power lines, both there and like farther down the pole with all of that technical bullshit that like we've all seen that. I don't know what any of it
Yeah.
means, but
Yeah.
we've all seen that. And wires in between buildings as well. Like, yeah, we're stealing power or cable or whatever.
And the corrugated roof, just yeah, just so much like great detailing.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
And a gradation from kind of busted old buildings to, farther up you get kind of more corporate looking buildings.
Yeah,
Can you zoom out a bit? So it's only two panels. I think obviously because the script called for two panels, but I mean, obviously that second panel would have worked by itself as a splash page, 100%. But I think the first panel, the side profile shot of Selena, uh, it's a very beautiful drawing of her face. I think having that and then going to the next panel where it's just ultra detail, I think they complement each other very well. I think that page is very nicely complete.
oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, the contrast of simplicity and complexity.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I can't stop looking at it.
So yeah, did both of you do art for this episode?
I didn't do any for this week. I had some stuff going on, so I didn't get around to it.
All right. So taking the trying to take the lessons from JPL on buildings. I mean, it's not successful, but it is once again me trying to mm, push myself, like choose a different, because choose a less conventional or a more difficult angle and try to create the feeling of a city. Again, I don't know that it's that successful. I don't think I really appreciated how much ink he lays down for buildings, and I should have used more of that,
Oh yeah.
but you know, yeah, you learn.
You don't seem
Did
very
you
enthusiastic about
did
it.
you did you use pencil crayon or did you use marker for that?
Pencil crayon.
Pencil crayon. I think if you
Yeah.
employed, I mean, I like it, but if you employed thicker lines on the buildings, I think
Yeah,
you would have liked
that's one of the things that I was like, and I kind of you can see towards the end here. This is kind of me going, oh no 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 wait, what I actually have to do is start using like chunkier lines, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just not it's not of a piece of itself, so it doesn't feel correct. It was a late addition to the whole thing, so I don't know. It's fine.
Well, it's a good composition.
Thank you.
She's framed pretty expertly, I think. And then you
And
have
I'm
a good amount of negative space there.
and I'm happy
Yeah,
with
it's a
the
good
pose
comp.
of her, but I mean the thing is I don't feel like figures are a weak spot for me at this point. It is the backgrounds that I really need to get. I need to dig down more on.
Get those
Yeah.
hours in.
Yeah.
Jeff Darrow, look at a lot of his stuff.
Yeah. The thing is that a lot of the stuff that I've been drawing for the Jason Zhang book has been like caves or the sea, right? Just things that are like, yeah, this can be whatever. Like it's blotches of tone rather than buildings that need to look like buildings. So
Which you prefer, right?
I do, but once again, you've cajoled me into pushing myself. So especially knowing how good you are at buildings, and
Thank you.
everybody check out Ace because there's a lot of that.
Did you use a lot of reference for those buildings?
I did actually, yes. Thinking from last time I did buildings, I was like, no, I'm gonna get reference this time. So it just
because that's one takeaway from John Paul Leon's work is just like a lot of reference used.
Yeah, but if anybody out there wants it, let me know.
Tree fitting.
Well, yeah. So I didn't do any art because I'm basically working on a sort of crisis event still. Just working my way through Arc 2.
You got to decompress with some non-ace drawing, man.
I really, really do, actually. It'd probably make me...
I think you should do some black and white ink drawings, man. Just throw something on a page.
Yeah, I need to...
just do black and white.
Yeah, I need to find some free time to... I definitely need to, because... it'll probably make my current work better. Yeah, as Taylor said, I need to decompress every now and then.
Yeah.
But let's close it out.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to comment and like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.